that we have seen. This is a new flashpoint built on old wounds driven by historic senses of racial inequality and injustice. There's also a sense of concern with the political backlash from both the centre and the right towards multiculturalism. And of course, there are also global parallels. In England in 2011, we had the riots following the shooting of Mark Duggan, and more recently, following the killing of George Floyd in the US, which started waves of disorder and a huge international movement. Here in France, we're waiting to see what the global impact will be. But in the short term, with the summer here, the schools out and the weather warm, when will this sense of disobedience and disorder come to an end? The third night of sustained violence between police and protesters, the most intense so far. It began in the Parisian suburb of Nanterre over the police killing of 17-year-old Nahal, who was of North African heritage. Police clashed with citizens following a vigil for the teenager. Cars were burned, streets barricaded, and objects hurled at riot police, in an outpouring of rage that could not be ignored. The violence started 3 days ago in the northwest of the capital, where a police officer shot the teenage boy dead during a traffic stop. Following the outcry over his death, rioting and disorder spread across Paris, including protesters lighting fires at the city hall of Clichy-sous-Bois and setting a bus depot ablaze in Aubervilliers. The clashes spread across the length and breadth of the country, from Lille in the north to Toulouse in the south. According to the Interior Ministry, 79 police posts were attacked, as well as 119 public buildings. Overnight, well over 800 arrests were made and at least 200 police officers injured, leaving France in the grip of a national crisis. President Macron hurried back from an EU summit early to chair his second emergency cabinet meeting in as many days. No doubt stung by criticism that he spent Wednesday night at Elton John's concert rather than dealing with the crisis. He now faces calls to declare a state of emergency, as President Jacques Chirac did in 2005 when riots in the capital raged for 3 weeks. But in 2005, social media was not as pervasive. Now President Macron is, at least in part, blaming copycat violence by teenagers organised online.
Social media platforms play a significant role in the events of the past few days. We have on several of them, Snapchat, TikTok and several others, both the organisation of violent gatherings and a form of mimicking of violence, which among the youngest leads to a feeling of unreality. It sometimes feels like some of them are experiencing in the streets the video games that have intoxicated them.
The officer who fired the deadly shot today has indicated that he will plead not guilty to a homicide charge, but has offered his apology to Nahal's family. But many public figures are calling for justice above all.
Today, calm would not happen if there are no political decisions or actions. We need political actions on the question of police violence. Justice has to be served, that's for sure.
A UN spokesperson for human rights has asked the country to address some of its issues with law enforcement.
We are concerned by the killing of a 17-year-old of North African descent by police in France on Tuesday. We note that an investigation has been launched into alleged voluntary homicide. This is a moment for the country to seriously address the deep issues of racism and racial discrimination in law enforcement.